Hello, everybody. My name is Taylor Wheeler. I'm the Digital Sales Director here at V Digital Services. Thank you so much for taking the time today to attend this webinar, and we're really excited to walk through some of these strategies and ideas that we have put together, around using social distancing as the centerpiece to your advertising strategy. So we are going to kick things off with a brief intro and an agenda here. And as we get started, just a couple of kind of housekeeping items. There is a Q&A box that I will be checking, and so will my co-presenter Melissa will be checking throughout. If we do not get to every question during the presentation, we have left time at the end to make sure to get to all questions. So please do ask away. We want this to be interactive. We want this to be helpful. And so we want, any and all questions to please be asked. We're also going to post some polls throughout the presentation. So please answer those polls as they come through. They're quick questions. This will just help us get, kind of a temperature on the room and make sure we can tailor some of the content specifically as we go. So all that being said, again, we're really excited to kind of walk through some tips and strategies. We want this to be educational, right? We're all navigating this unprecedented time here. And so we've really tried to put some specific recommendations together for everyone. And so that being said, as I mentioned, I am Taylor Wheeler, Director of Digital Sales with V Digital. We are a full service marketing agency. We also own and operate alternative weekly newspapers throughout the country. So we have been hit with similar challenges as all of you, I am sure. And we have had to pivot, and we have had to act quickly. And that's some of the biggest items that we're really going to touch on today is really thinking differently than you did back in February. If you're acting the same and having the same conversations that you did in February, now you're doing it wrong. We have to completely upend everything. We have to lean forward into this and really make it the centerpiece of our strategy instead of being reactive. We need to be proactive with this. And again, that's, I think, the biggest point we're going to try and get across today. So again, that's me. We're V Digital. And then I'm going to also pass it over to Melissa, who's the co-presenter. Melissa?
Thanks, Taylor. My name is Melissa Sheehan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer with AdCellerant. We're a technology and digital company, and we are partnered with V Digital Services to really help small and medium-sized businesses navigate this space. And so we're excited to talk with you all today. It's a little bit different than it was 7 or 8 weeks ago. But like Taylor said, as you have questions, put them in that Q&A box, and we'll get to all of them. We're going to start today by just setting the stage. Talk about what's happening since this COVID-19 crisis has hit the United States. I know we have people from across the country on the call today, and everyone's community has been impacted a little bit differently. In order to really frame this, we looked at Google's mobility data, and this tracks where people are going, obviously with their cell phone in their pocket. And as you can see, a lot of places have seen a decline in foot traffic. So retail and recreation down, nearly 50%, grocery down by a quarter, and workplaces down by nearly 40%. You can see parks are down 20%, transit stations, all leading to the fact that residential is where people are spending the majority of their time. And that's really been the last 6 to 7 weeks of our lives. So let's talk about what that means for us as marketers and as business owners. With nearly 85% of Americans still under stay-at-home orders, consumers are cautious, but they're about half as mobile as they used to be. And as these restrictions start to ease in different areas, these customers really want to know how they can interact with their local businesses. Where do they turn to find these local businesses? And as marketers, it's our job to provide the reassurance that they're safe, they're able to do business with us, because recent surveys have shown that roughly 92% of consumers still want to hear from brands during the COVID-19 crisis. Let's talk about what they're doing when they're at home. Online sales have grown by nearly 30% March versus February. No surprise. But the surprising part is they've grown it in nearly every sector, everything from apparel to health and wellness. Food and beverage obviously have skyrocketed. Searches for takeout have increased nearly 300%. What this tells us is that consumers are still buying. They still have a need to get that home office set up. They are worried if they can't get to that haircut or that hair color, that they might need to order something, for that beauty category. And they are turning online. They're spending a lot of time online. We've looked at a lot of studies that have shown us that online usage, streaming TV, things like that have increased anywhere from 30 to 95% in some areas. So let's talk about, how do you as a business connect with your customer? Taylor's going to walk us through a few ways that we've seen that happen.
Yeah, the first way, and kind of touched on this at the beginning, the first way is you've got to lean into technology. You cannot be stagnant. You can't focus on the old ways of communicating with your customers. You've got to lean into this technology. And number one there is making sure that you're offering virtual services to meet with your customers, whether that is video chat, FaceTime, Google Hangouts. Make sure you're communicating. And that's really an overarching theme to all of this in terms of connecting with your customer, is make sure you're communicating clearly with your either potential customer or past customers. They need to know what you're offering currently, how you're offering it, how they can get it, and when they can get it. And that communication needs to be clear, concise, and quick. They need to be able to find that information quickly. And the main way to do that, because everyone is obviously stuck at home, is through this technology. And so some ways to do that, in addition to just communicating with them via these virtual services, is updating your online pages, right? So your social media pages. Make sure that your Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of your different social media pages are updated with all of that accurate information, and that you're continually having that conversation with your customers via social media, so they can still engage with your brand. Let them know what brand and product that you are still offering if those things have shifted. But it's key to make that pivot. Also, update your website with the same information. Whether or not you offer e-commerce or that you can buy products online, you still need to update your website to show what relevant products and services are out there for your customers to browse. So make sure that that information and those hours and all of that is up to date and relevant. This kind of dovetails off of that, but make sure that you've implemented a chat widget, some type of chat bot on your website. We actually offer one called Chat AI that we recommend here, but there are several out there, and no matter what, we really recommend that you get a chat bot on your website. People want quick responses, and they don't necessarily want, obviously, to go in person to a place, and they don't want to make a phone call. And this is even quicker than that form fill. They can get instant engagement with that brand, which right now really creates that credibility and that relevance between you and the customer. And then lastly, offer e-commerce solutions. Make sure that if there's any type of product or service, whether it's ordering it online, whether it's buying it online, or even just reserving it online, make sure there's the option to do all of this virtually and via an e-commerce solution. There's tools like WooCommerce and Shopify out there. There's just some really good, affordable e-commerce sort of starter packages out there that really can get the job done, and they can be built quickly. We at Be Digital have built several of these within 2 or 3 days and getting them live. And that really makes you relevant. And again, then you're able to communicate to those customers and let them know how they can get your products and services. So we really, really want to focus on those e-commerce solutions. So kind of, going into more detail on the technology is updating your website. And so I think a lot of people have probably heard or been approached about just making sure you have a banner on your website, about what type of safety precautions you're taking for you and your employees and for your customers. That is absolutely important, but even more so, it's important that right on your homepage, you are letting people know how they can engage with your brand, how they can purchase your product, and when they can do it. So this This website you see here on the right does this really in 3 ways. They tell people at the top with that banner that curbside pickup is available, and it's right there front and center. They also say that they've got wine to go, which is right in the middle of their website, and they also are offering gift certificates at the bottom right. That is 3 ways just on their homepage that they're communicating to their customers or potential customers how they can buy their products. And that's really what needs to be done. It's not just about announcing your safety measures during COVID. It is telling people right there, without having to dig around on the website, how and when they can purchase their products. So it's key that you have that information updated. If it's not already, it needs to get done, today. Along those same lines is not only your website, but your Google My Business page. Your Google My Business page before all of this happened with COVID was almost becoming your homepage anyway, especially for those near me searches and those location-based searches. It's somewhat changed a little bit because less people are on their mobile devices, but it's still absolutely important that your business information is up to date on this Google My Business page. I mean, I can't tell you how many times it's happened to me in the last 6 weeks where I have gone to do a search. Let's say you're looking for a restaurant. You go to the Google page and it says they're open, and then you call and they're not, or they don't open for 2 more hours. You just lost that customer. They're going to go somewhere else, and they're probably not going to come back, right? Unless they're a really hardcore, loyal customer. So making sure something as simple as your hours of operation are up to date is really, really key here. And talking about, do you offer delivery? Do you offer takeout? That's important to make sure it's up to date as well, because again, people need to know that immediately based on, the decisions they're going to make. And then also, have you added relevant categories to your Google My Business page? There are categories that exist today that probably didn't apply to you in the past, but maybe now you do offer delivery, and so making sure that category is now part of your Google My Business page is really important. So you start showing up in searches that are relevant to takeout and delivery. And those takeout and delivery searches, again, are up almost 300% across the board. So that is really, really important. And then you can see the benefits to doing that, right? To doing these updates. You're almost 3 times more likely to be considered reputable if you're making these updates with clean, consistent information and staying on top of this, which is, a big deal right now, is being credible and reputable. It's what separates your brand a lot of times. You're going to get 7 times more clicks on your Google My Business page just by having it up to date and accurate. And that engagement then typically leads to purchases. It's also 70% more likely to attract visits. In this case, we're talking more about online visits and online reservations and online purchases, but also, in-person visits if it applies to your business. And then lastly, you're 50% more likely to get a purchase if you're making sure that your information is up to date, because you're that much more likely to show up in these searches. And if you're showing up in these searches, you're more likely, again, to get the conversion for a purchase. So some very, very simple, quick things that you should all be doing and checking on immediately as it relates to Google My Business.
Absolutely. Taylor just covered some important steps that every business can take today to make sure that they are staying relevant during this time. And, further than that, we wanted to really look at how to communicate with your customers continually. And that would be advertising messages. During this tough time, I know a lot of people are cutting back their ad spend, and rightly so. But looking at the ability to recover from this COVID-19 crisis, because we know that it will end, we look historically at other crises and recessions in the past. And so this study of 600 different businesses in the 1980s looked at the businesses who advertised and the businesses who cut back. And those who cut advertising did not recover as quickly as those who consistently stayed in front of their current customers and potential customers. And so you can see that the rebound is significant for those companies that maintained a presence among their community and their customer base. There are numerous benefits because the noise level drops, right? There are people who are cutting back on ad spend. But the other benefits include allowing your business, like Taylor said, to reposition your brand, to introduce a new product or adapt to this marketplace. And that's the crucial point. Adapt your business to the marketplace, whether they are out and about or whether they are at home. It can also project an image of stability during these challenging times to make sure that you're staying in front of those customers. And the cost of advertising drops during these recessions or crisis periods. But the main goal here is to make sure that you don't lose that share of mind with your potential customers, with your loyal customers, and with your future customers. There's a couple of examples of this that we've seen in the past. In the 1990-91 recession, Pizza Hut and Taco Bell took advantage of the giant McDonald's, who had dropped their advertising spend and promotions. As a result, Pizza Hut grew sales by 61%, Taco Bell by 40%, and McDonald's declined by nearly 30%. Another strategy to consider is changing your ad message. And messaging is going to be really important during this time, and we'll cover that a little later on. Use short-term price incentives. Match the economic climate. We know that a lot of people may be out of work or struggling right now. So look at those who are seeking a good deal. Some advertisers are offering interest-free loans, coupons, special promotions, and when the economy bounces back, regular pricing can return. And so we look at some of these tactics, but we really want to know, how do they connect with the consumer? And different studies have shown us that while consumers aren't able to visit local businesses as often, they do want to stay connected. 43% of them find it reassuring to hear from brands that they know and trust. That makes a lot of sense. We're hearing lots of different things on the news, some of it bad news, some of it hopeful news, but hearing from somebody in the local community is reassuring. Only 15% said they didn't want to hear from brands. That means 85% of people really do want to hear what's going on. 40% want to hear what are brands doing in response to the pandemic. And this is twofold. What are they doing both internally to protect their employees and their customers, or what are they doing for the community? Because what we know is that 6 out of 10 are pleased to hear about brands taking action like making donations of their goods and services during this time. And the brand response has also been very positive. Well, we don't know what the effect on ad spend will be. A recent Internet Advertising Bureau found brands are already adapting their strategy. They're pivoting. 95% of consumers said that advertising adjacent to COVID-19 coverage would not adversely affect their sentiment toward a brand or a product. And as a result, 63% of advertisers are adjusting their marketing strategy and their messaging. Nearly half of them are planning to switch to purpose-driven marketing or cause-related marketing. And 4 out of 10 plan to increase their audience targeting. Audience targeting is going to be really crucial as a business owner right now, making sure that you're limiting your ad spend and your ad waste by reaching only those who are in market for your product or service, who may have been searching for it or reading about your product or service. Nearly over a third of businesses plan to increase device targeting, looking at those streaming television or over-the-top media and connected TVs, as streaming television has surged during this time. And the good news is that 7 out of 10, nearly 7 out of 10 surveys have not made an ad spend change for Q3 and Q4 as a result of COVID-19. So these are positive brand responses that we are seeing. And we'll talk a little bit about how this can impact your business and what messaging makes the most sense for you.
Yeah, and so what do we do with all those numbers, right? Like, those are, some good positive stats there, but how do we take that and now, create a strategy around it? And that's kind of what we're going to go into next, is what's the messaging at an industry level that we can use? What are some best practices and some tactics? And that's what we want to really focus on next. But just kind of going quickly back to something Melissa mentioned, is when we say keep advertising, that doesn't mean keep spending hundreds of thousands of dollars if that's what you were doing before. It does mean don't go away, though, and don't crawl into a hole. You've got to continue to be at the forefront and letting your customers and potential customers know that you're still around. That doesn't mean you break the bank. That just means that you find creative and innovative ways to do that. Some paid, some not, right? There's plenty of organic ways you can do that as well, just by updating your website and things we talked about. So keep advertising also just means keep being present and be out there. So there's definitely cost-effective ways to do that as well. Like she mentioned with the audience targeting, there's no time for waste right now. It's about finding that specific customer and potential customer base and hitting them and only them. So, again, just to clarify that piece. And so before we go into these specific messages that we kind of want to look at for each industry, just at a high level, I think these are really good tenets to keep in mind when you're doing any type of ad or messaging or communicating anything at all to your customers. And number one is just to be relevant, right? The last thing anybody wants to do during this time is to come off as tone deaf or insensitive. So make sure your messaging and your creative is relevant to what's going on right now. That also means make sure your products and your services potentially have changed to make sure that they are relevant to what is going on right now. That will absolutely align you with your customer. Number two is present with empathy and transparency. And I think this is, to me, the most important one of all of these, right? Everyone in some form or fashion is going through this, and we're all somewhat on the same footing. So present your message with empathy, be honest and be empathetic with this, and also transparency. You don't have to sugarcoat this. This is a time to really kind of disrupt some of your advertising strategies and be open and honest and transparent in that messaging. And I think that's really, really important. I think consumers right now it's gonna resonate with them. It adds a level of humanity to the brand, which also number three does, right? Associating your brand with good. We've already touched on some of that a little bit, but making sure that in your messaging that you are, whether it's some type of give back or an alignment with a charity, honoring, first line responders, that type of thing is really, obviously it's feel good, but it's also going to be a great way to get customers and to have them stick with you down the road. And then lastly, be interactive. And this really speaks to your website presence and your social media presence, but interact with your customers. Again, your customers that you had in February are not guaranteed to be there when things turn, right? We have got to upend everything. So we've got to continue to interact with that current customer base so they don't go elsewhere, because there are too many other options now and there are too many changes that have happened that we can't even take that existing customer base for granted. So this messaging needs to be interactive. We have to continue this conversation going, whether that's through our social channels, whether that's through email, whether that's through chat AI on our website. Like, those things all have to continue to keep going. And so those are really those top level messages that we want to get across. So now let's kind of dive into some specific industries, and we'll start with restaurants. And Melissa, you want to take this one?
Sorry about that. Besides restaurants, consider any industry. There are all kinds of tips and tricks that you can borrow from across different industries. These examples are real-life examples from across the country of advertisers who have been communicating, advertising, and staying in front of their customers. Restaurants were probably one of the first industries to have to pivot, as restaurants and bars were, closed down by the COVID-19 crisis. The best practices that we've seen are some of the things that Taylor mentioned: being creative with your customers, keeping those menus updated online, offering different kinds of options, maybe a family meal package, a date night special. Play around with your audience. They are stuck at home, so maybe offering a virtual cooking class, or interacting with them, giving them email recipe tips. That's not just for a restaurant. I actually got a cooking class invite from a yoga studio the other day. So thinking about how can you interact with your customers in a fun way that aligns with your brand. A lot of places, whether it's a restaurant or not, are encouraging patrons to purchase cards with an extra incentive. Buy $50, get an extra $5 when you spend now or spend later. Make sure you're targeting the families, the foodies, the people who may have been to your restaurant in the past. And you can see this example on the right-hand side. You know, they packaged this really nice date night special so that people can just click very easily, order to go. We've got some other examples that show us how crucial it is to make sure that you're showing up correctly on your Google My Business page. You know, by contacting this restaurant, obviously dine-in is not an option, but both delivery and takeout are an option. You know, it clearly communicates how to do business. Include offers. You can see that, you know, placing an order to go is another great place. Very simple, very transparent, a great message just to get right in front of your customers. And the ways to do this, we've touched on a little bit. Local SEO, that's your Google My Business page. You know, social media, communicating with those customers, and making sure that you have an e-commerce solution for online ordering. Being available for those customers when they are looking for you.
Yeah, so here's another, you know, another industry that actually has been somewhat, you know, thriving, and maybe not thriving, but definitely doing decent during this time, and that's alternative wellness, right? So whether that's CBD, whether that's any kind of holistic pain or stress reliever or sleep aid, or that's cannabis, all of these different alternative wellness solutions that people are looking for. People want to feel good right now, right? There's enough stress going on in the world that these different products and services have seen a spike, and especially looking for these solutions online. Whether you have a brick and mortar or not related to this industry, people are looking online, and they will, and that's really where they're going to first interact with your brand. So some best practices in this space, you know, number one is offering discounts. We mentioned that a little bit earlier, Melissa did, and another one of the huge benefits of offering a discount with a promo code is trackability. So really being able to see the value of that campaign is really important from a discount and promo code perspective. Something specifically that I've seen in this sort of alternative wellness space is creating new products. I mean, that's one of the things that come out of, you know, these crises that we have, is sometimes there's new innovation and new things that we continue to do after this is over. And so we've seen some of our hemp companies crafting CBD hand sanitizer. And so there's been certain innovations that have happened as a result of this. So if you have a product or a service that you can utilize it to keep your brand relevant, that's really important. Keeping your inventory up to date, et cetera. Again, making sure that website has everything that a customer could possibly want. Who to target? You know, there's, you know, obviously anyone 21 plus searching online for sleep aids and pain relievers and stress relievers. It's a ton of people out there right now. These are one of those areas that search volumes have increased quite a bit. Also leveraging data to find customers who have been in your brick and mortar before the pandemic started, or who have been in competitors' brick and mortars before the pandemic started. You're able to then target them through banner campaigns as well. So there's definitely some ways that you can reach out to these folks online. And then, you know, what and how to communicate these things. Again, I think it's all about relevant products to what's going on right now. But it's also partnering and having messaging that's relevant. Going back to the high-level messaging a few slides ago, make sure that your message is relevant. And you can see this ad here for Bensky. I love this ad. It's partnered up with a hunger nonprofit, so they're going to donate proceeds of their CBD purchases to this Feeding America nonprofit. You can see the tracker of, you know, their goal in terms of what they've raised to donate to this charity. I think this is a great message to put out there, and I just love the creative as well. It's clean, it's bright, it's airy, it makes you feel good, right? And that's what people are looking for with these types of products. So, and this type of message, I think this is great. You can also see a local dispensary here. Their messaging is so clear. It's that they're open for curbside, and here's our hours, and it's every day. That is what you've got to continue to communicate. And then some tactics to consider is the device ID I mentioned. In this industry, in this, you know, these alternative wellness products, you've got to have an e-commerce solution. And if you don't, that's got to be priority number one, along with then that chat functionality. And so making sure you're showing up from an SEO perspective because of all these spikes in searches. And that's one thing too during a time like this when people do cut back on advertising, that also means they probably cut back maybe on internal assets that were managing their SEO, or they cut back on their SEO agency. What that is, though, is an opportunity for certain people to make up some ground if you don't cut back on that. So continuing to engage in something like SEO is almost giving your brand a chance to make up some ground in those keyword rankings where it may have been difficult in the past because everyone was fighting for that same real estate. Well, as people dial things back, now is your chance to kind of sprint forward. So this organic SEO piece relates to a lot of industries and as a way to sort of take advantage, not just this alternative wellness. And then social media, big for every industry. It's going to be pretty much across the board.
Going back to where people are investing their time, many people are still at home now and for the foreseeable future. And so now they're looking around that house. They're looking at that old roof. They're looking at that dirty carpet. And many home services businesses are considered essential businesses. And so if you are one of these businesses, really think about showcasing projects that people can complete at home or giving them ideas. Offering something like maybe a social distancing or DIY kit with instructions on, how to put together that deck or that garden planter. These are some best practices that we're really seeing. Also leveraging the fact that low interest rates can mean that people are able to put off payments or, pay a little bit less if they have a project that they would want to complete. If you're in the home services category, targeting home owners, nearly any homeowner, is a great idea. You can also layer in household income or the age of a home to a specific area. Some of the different advertising and what we're seeing these folks communicate is things that I mentioned. You can start that new project. Very simple. We're open. Curbside delivery and pickup are available. That's that first ad just right here on the right. Also appealing to the fact that they are a local business. We know that consumers want to support their local community during this time. There's never been a better time to go solar. Great message. Be prepared, not scared, right? They're really appealing to what people may be feeling. And, this window company, like I said, taking advantage of, 0% interest, zero payments for 24 months, plus they're donating a portion of every sale to a food bank. So as a home services company, not only should you focus on communicating what critical work may need to be completed around the home, but also play with the concept of free time. I don't know about you, but my weekends are a lot freer than they were a year ago. I spent most weekends a year ago on the soccer fields or running from this activity to that activity. But now I'm spending a lot of time in my backyard. We're looking around the house for projects to do, not only because they may need to be done, but because it's fun to spend time outside and to spend time building something. So lean into that. Also, home services is heavily offer driven. So offering promotions or discounts to drive purchases and really giving folks ideas on how to spruce up their space can be a great practice. Some of the tactics that we've seen are, targeted display ads towards consumers, those ideas. Paid search is really important if you're in this category. If people are looking for your business through a search, then you want to be found. And make sure that you have information on COVID-specific content on your website during this time. If you need to interact with that homeowner, how are you taking safety measures? How are you keeping your employees safe during this time? Those are important messages to make sure that you're putting out there.
Yeah, and moving on to education, really, all levels of education. This has been, as a marketing agency, a space where we've seen a lot of engagement since, early March and all of this started happening. So, I think there's a couple reasons here and, kind of some best practices. One is, people are unfortunately losing their jobs or being furloughed. So it's kind of this transition point in their lives. So, there's a lot of people who are thinking maybe they'll go back to school, for graduate programs or to learn specific skills. So how do you as a school, how do you get in front of those people? And this speaks again to what we touched on a little bit earlier about not needing to waste money on people that are not a good fit. You can see who to target. We can really get specific, and you can get really specific as to who you can target, and are they a certain age group, and are they looking online for higher education or graduate programs or specific degrees, whether it's an MBA versus a associate's degree or an undergrad degree. So we can get really specific on that targeting, which allows us not to have to waste any of that. You can get really specific on degree type. So you can see some examples on here, and I think some of the best practices that you see here are what we've been touching on already. This El Centro ad is really like a callback to people. Things have changed, but we are keeping you connected to your education. Enroll now. So things have changed, but guess what? We still have all of these solutions for you that allow you to enroll now, as well as this Brookhaven ad that really gives you specific messaging about the fact that there's been no better time than now to learn a new skill. So trying to create that intent with someone by saying, listen, what better time than now to use this time you have and use this opportunity to learn a new skill. So I think this messaging is really important and really highlights some of the ways that you can capitalize what we've seen, which is sort of an increase in this education space. The other thing is, I know for a lot of schools, they've lost the opportunity to do these in-person fairs or these in-person meet and greets. And so now being able to take those target audiences that you would see and be meeting with in person and now speak to them digitally, it's absolutely doable with different things like targeted display ads and retargeting, and being able to kind of pull a bucket of people that fit a certain demographic and would have been at these different fairs and serve them ads digitally is a really good way to kind of repurpose. And again, we keep saying this word, but pivot and use that budget in a different way.
And nearly everybody in America is really focused on e-learning or distance learning right now, whether you're an adult thinking to learn a new skill, or whether you're a family struggling with working from home and having school-aged children trying to learn from a distance. If you're in this area, some of the best practices are really to differentiate your brand, make sure you're communicating online and reaching your exact target audience, and target multiple groups or the groups that apply best to what you offer. Because e-learning is going to apply to all levels, primary school, niche certifications, even internal and external business training. A lot of companies are remote, but they still need to offer training to their employees. And so think about, if you're in this e-learning space, who you can and what targeting applies specifically to you, because all of those targets are now available. So how do you communicate this? Really transparent, be straightforward, support local families who may be struggling, offer tutoring assistance, communicate urgency if you have any enrollment deadlines for specific courses, customizing that messaging for new skills or people looking for a higher level of education, and explain whether you offer distance learning, e-learning, or a combination of both as we kind of move forward into this new normal, how you are addressing that with your staff and with your students. Some of the tactics you can see on the right here is these targeted display ads that are, connecting Mathnasium as a learning solution to local families, or looking to target people who are interested in their online MBA program. Search is a great way to get in front of those folks who are searching for solutions right now and ideas, and making sure that you're found if they are searching for an e-learning or just help with tutoring right now.
So another really big one is the healthcare industry. And I mean, everybody, on this call today is heard about telehealth and all the different options that are out there. And that's absolutely a big part of it. But, under healthcare, I'm going to also include like kind of anything medical related, chiropractors, And also even kind of like your med spas, right? People who are doing procedures that still are going to have that close interaction. They may not, they're elective, right? But they are still very much under that medical heading. And so this industry, probably more than any other, is where it's important to have that relevant messaging and have that that communication be clear about, you know, what your you know, what precautions you're taking and what the process is. It's also, you know, going to get really competitive. I mean, just as an anecdote, my wife and I both go to a chiropractor and love her. She's great. But my wife went last week when things started to get, some of the restrictions started to be eased, and the chiropractor wasn't wearing a mask. And, you know, I don't think we're terribly paranoid people, but it still kind of threw us off a little bit. And so now, you know, we've got this person that we've been a customer of for a long time, a patient of for a long time, and we really like. But we're going and researching other chiropractors now because it just seemed a little tone deaf, right? It didn't seem like she was really paying attention to what was going on here, especially in this healthcare and medical industry. So what does that mean? It means now we're researching. So the people who are still advertising and the people that are still communicating to potential customers and patients are the people that we're going to call and potentially go see. So again, this goes back to my point as well. And, you know, this is, I think, again, really specific to the healthcare industry, that that the people who were your customers before are not guaranteed to come back. So you've got to continue to stay in front of them. And again, here's just some good advertising messages as well, especially the St. Luke. You know, they're explaining very clearly how to connect with your doctor via smartphone, tablet, PC, laptop. If I saw that ad, let's say, and it was for a chiropractor and it showed me how I could connect with a chiropractor after I'm doing this search, I'm going to respond to that ad because now I'm in market for that. And they're telling me very clearly how I can interact with them. And then I'm going to be able to ask those questions about their safety precautions, et cetera.
If you're in retail, connecting with your customers at home is going to be a must. And a lot of that is going to be around an e-commerce solution for the short term and maybe for the long term. There's been a huge increase in e-commerce, and Shopify offers free 14-day trials among other e-commerce solutions. Those are things we're helping our advertisers with. And looking about your messaging, you have a lot of targeting available, but look at how nice this retailer has done a job of incorporating a virtual stylist in the bottom left-hand corner of this page, pivoting to make sure that they are addressing people working from home and what they might want to, you know, have for a comfortable, you know, outfit at home. So think about the unique ways that you can connect with your customers or offer them the right solutions. You can see here that there's all kinds of different retail industries that are leaning on the current environment. You know, everything from this, you know, specialty Pilates class, you know, if you're a Pilates instructor or a med spa or something like that, you have the ability to connect with customers and to be able to offer them services and ideas virtually. You could see this mattress retailer in the middle of the page leaning on the 0% financing, and the shopping online or, you know, curbside pickup for a local nursery. Communicate, if you're a retailer, as these restrictions may be loosening, how you're taking precautions inside your store and with your employees. So that messaging really matters, and the ability to connect with customers has never been better than right now to be able to lean on some of these e-commerce solutions.
And then going into real estate, and I'm going to go a little bit quickly through these last couple because I know we're getting close on time and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. But with real estate, the big thing here, I think most people on this call have probably seen, is, you know, these virtual tours, right? You know, it's almost impossible to do these in-home tours of homes. So it's all about the virtual tour. And you can see in this creative, it's all about sharing that ability that you have as an agency or a real estate agent to be able to conduct these virtual tours. But the other thing is, you know, there's historically low interest rates, as we've mentioned. So there are great deals to be had out there. You've got to communicate that though to the potential customer, because they're not necessarily, unless they're in a position where they have to move, they're not necessarily probably going to be voluntarily making that decision, but if you can market to them and really, again, create that intent around these great deals, but also letting them know that you're taking their safety into consideration, then that's going to be a really good message there.
My favorite real estate message was, if you can find a spouse online, you can buy a home online. So think about creative ways to talk to your customers. And again, we can't reiterate enough. Think about e-commerce solutions. Whether you are a true retail business, a restaurant that would like to offer online ordering, or even a home services company that is looking to have appointments booked online. There are lots of e-commerce solutions that are out there, or that you can get help with implementing, because we know that nearly 90% of people are researching their products before purchasing online.
And then lastly, before we kind of get into our key takeaways and our key considerations, I added this because I know on this webinar we had a large amount of people who either work for events or put on events, whether it's concerts or theater productions, et cetera. So we did want to touch on kind of some ideas as far as how can you navigate this event space. And so obviously, events and event spaces have been hit maybe as hard, if not harder than anyone else has, right? Concerts, et cetera. These large gatherings are just impossible to do. So even as a company, V Digital and our sister companies, we put on events, and we've had to navigate through this and come up with different solutions. So here's some of the things that we've done and that we've seen. A lot of these things are still really new, and these ideas are kind of in their infancy. And if there's specific questions that anybody on the call has regarding events, we would love to take that offline as well and kind of brainstorm some ideas, because I know it's a tough space here. But just some of the things that we've seen and that we've actually executed ourselves in some cases are some of these virtual events. So virtual happy hours that are either, maybe they're sponsored by a liquor company, sponsored by a bar, maybe they're done in partnership with a restaurant and a liquor company and a bar. Whatever it is, these are a good way to monetize some of these virtual events, and also partner up with multiple brands here. And we've seen that work really well. And we've actually done some on our own and gotten really good engagement. Virtual concert series for concerts, streaming performances, those things were already sort of in the works. And I think now they're just being pushed forward to the forefront. Obviously, they're not going to be able to recoup the same amount of money as you would from an actual live concert or one of these events. But again, just another way to try and supplement some of that lost revenue. Along those same lines too, if you look at this last bullet, the tours of your space, I think this is a really interesting way to get some supplemental revenue as well. As if you are a large music venue, offer tours so people can go see backstage or the green room and get kind of a feel for what it's like, for something they could never have seen on that intimate of a level. Now, if there's, once again, some of the restrictions are eased and people can do some on-site visits, that's a really cool way, I think, to get some engagement. And again, it just keeps those people connected with your brand. Not only are you doing a tour, but now they're thinking about you and they can't wait for you to reopen so they can engage again. And also using your space potentially for smaller private events. Maybe, you let's say you can have gatherings of 50 or less, hosting dinner parties with chefs, right? Doing small events, in the same way you would do private events for Christmas parties and things like that. So just using that space for a different way is another option. We've seen some different events toss around the idea of doing flighted entry. So you've got an event, 500 people. Let's do 50 people come in, and then they go out, and then another 50 come in with this flighted entry. Again, really early on in these ideas, but just different ways that you can start to brainstorm a way to supplement some of that lost revenue. So again, we'd love to brainstorm some more ideas with you guys if you are in that event space. But here's some good starting points.
Really making a plan is probably the best advice that we have right now. And talking with businesses across the country, it costs nothing to do that, right? But it could cost you later if you don't have one. Think about timing. Right now through the end of June, audiences are still going to be highly engaged. Ad clutter is going to be relatively low, according to recent studies. Take advantage of this window to gain market share, get your name out there back in front of your potential customers. Even if you're not open yet, tell them about your plan. Think about a phased approach in your messaging to make sure that you are communicating clearly and communicating often. Think about reaching those multiple audiences. Former customers may think differently about entering your space. Potential customers and current customers. Those are great ways to really think about segmenting your messaging, highlight your changes that you're making, and adapt quickly to the audience. We're going to open it up for questions in the Q&A box. And so we've got a couple of questions that we've had throughout here, but throw those questions in right now and we'll be able to answer them live for you right now.
Yeah, we've got one that's come through basically asking, is it wise to start a business at this time, And I guess the short answer there is it really depends on what the type of business is. But for the same reasons that I think potentially it's a good time to advertise because inventory is high, so that means rates could be potentially lower, et cetera. I think it could be a good time to start a business because, again, you're going to have some time to build that business up while things are still, getting back to, the new normal that we keep talking about. So it really would depend on I think the industry, but it's no different than maybe launching a new product or a new brand within an existing business. I think it's all about the relevance of that business and that brand to current time, and what's going on now. It looks like we've got another one that just came through. If you need to cut budget with ad costs but still want to take advantage of less clutter in the ad space, what do you think might be the best venue for the adult education industry? Well, I think, Melissa, I'll let you touch on this as well. But I think, some of the biggest spaces where we see increased inventory but less purchases is going to be in those paid media avenues, right? So targeted digital display ads, Google paid search, and social media ads, specifically on Facebook and Instagram. We've specifically seen on social that there are increases in activity on social media, not surprisingly, but decreases in ad spend, also not surprising. So what does that mean? It means there's even more inventory and more incentive for Facebook to give better, cost per impressions, et cetera. So to me, utilizing some of those avenues, Google, paid Facebook, paid Instagram, and some of those targeted digital displays is the best route to go there. But Melissa, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that really focuses on the targeting, making sure that if you are speaking to a specific audience, if you have a specific offering, there's targeting available for that. The amount of targeting that's available online is more than robust. And so talk with somebody about your specific business. How do you find the individuals who are most interested, and can put together a lot of information to give you guidance in that area. We had another question from a small business about a product that we see as a no-brainer or a good starting point. I don't know about you, Taylor, my mind does go to search, because if I'm searching for a product, I'm probably in the market to purchase it. What do you think?
Yeah, it would be either that local search, so just even if you have a brick and mortar, finding, making sure your actual business listing appears as high up as possible in search, but also then organic search, because yeah, exactly right. It's going to be the lowest funnel asset, right? That's people already looking for what you offer. So you just need to make sure you're showing up in front of them, right? They're in that consideration mode. So you want to make sure that if they're in consideration mode, that they're considering your brand. So yeah, some form of search, whether it's on that local level or at that organic level, would be, to me, always be the best starting point, whether you're a small, medium, or large business, because it's really kind of the long-term health of your overall website.
We've had several questions. We will send out a recording of this webinar and the materials themselves We know that you weren't able to read every single bullet here, but we are also available if you have any questions after the fact.
Yep. Thank you so much, guys, for your time and your interaction here. Oh, we actually had one more question come through. Do you see this as a chance for community radio ad sales to go up? I think any place that offers an avenue to speak to, again, like Melissa has mentioned a couple of times, to speak to a really targeted audience, I think that is a good opportunity for that business. So community radio obviously, it's feel good. It's got that very that very neighborhood anyway kind of feel, and so the associations that come with nonprofits and things like that when I think of community radio. So yes, I mean, I think it's an opportunity to make sure that you can solicit ad sales for people who are trying to kind of speak to that audience. And I think, community radio, from what I know, has a very specific kind of audience that makes it a nice avenue, because you can speak to those, that targeted audience that we keep talking about, and not waste, a lot of your ad revenue on irrelevant consumers. Okay. So, yeah. So thanks again, everyone, for your time. Again, we are going to send this out, like Melissa mentioned. Please follow up with us if you have any questions that you want to take offline, or again, want to see anything in more detail that we talked about here. We had to kind of blow through some of those industries quickly because there was a lot to cover. So everybody have a safe and healthy and happy rest of the week. And we really appreciate your time. Take care.